Welcome back to the Mid-Year YouTube channel. Today's episode, we're going to start removing the fiberglass on the 65 Corvette Coupe that I brought in a couple weeks ago, so be sure to stick around. In the last video, I told you that center field was leaving, and well, it's gone. It left about an hour ago. So now it's time to jump into the 65, which you probably saw in a previous video. So the goal is to build first the firewall back of this car. This thing's all smashed up, as you can tell by all these pieces. The goal is to first fix the birdcage, then fix the rear portion of the body, put a custom floor in it, to fit a roadster shop chassis, then we'll put a front end on it. So this thing is gonna need a lot of work, but the first step is to get all this stuff out of it and around it, drag it out here. We need to remove the piece of frame that's stuck under this thing, which holds the gas tank and the bumper. We gotta get that out, and then we can start diagnosing this car, seeing what all we have to do to fix it right. Well, now that we got the gas tank and this very large piece of a frame out from under this thing, we can start to diagnose this old girl. I spent a lot of time looking at this, formulating a plan, figuring out what we want to do. A lot of people ask me, how do you take something like this and how do you fix it? How do you know where to start? Well, in this case, the car is pretty beat up in the front, and the way that it's messed up and wrecked, in my eyes, it's a pretty clear-cut path. For example, we have the rockers are cut about 2 feet short. The windshield post is cut right below the main windshield cross member that attaches over to the other side. The center of the windshield is kinked right here. We also have a pretty sizable kink right here in the drip rail. So if you add all those things together, in my eyes, the simplest way to do this is to pull all the fiberglass off the birdcage. I got both the driver and passenger quarter panel off. I don't remember if I mentioned this, but I could tell that this car had part of a taillight panel put on it because it has pop rivets holding these nut plates in for these ones right here. But then you come over here and you have your original style solid rivets. So sure enough, if we look underneath the car, through all the cobwebs, right by the license plate frame, you can see there's a splice. I knew this quarter was put on one because there's so much Bondo, but it was also a different color. It looks like it was put on with resin. So I changed up my tactic. Instead of grinding the seams, because this car was already wrecked, it had a big jolt to break a lot of the fiberglass free. I just roughly knew where the seam was, hit it with the air hammer to make an indent in, and then I just drove down and blasted the quarter off and pretty much just ripped this side off. Maybe you see it better from over here. Yeah, if you look right here, this whole seam is separated. So this whole part of the rear deck, the whole way around, isn't attached to the floor pan anymore. So that does kind of change up the path I was gonna do. I was gonna pull the full floor out, but we're just gonna remove the whole top skin because, well, it's already halfway there. So we need to take that seam out right there. We need to go around the birdcage, which a lot of this is kind of done. We're gonna carefully separate up around here because this roof skin, these are really thin. So we're gonna take our time, try not to crack anything too bad. Now it is sun-baked and a little bit brittle, but we're gonna do our best. All this is already done. Gonna work our way down here and then work on this joint of the floor tub here. And we'll just pull the whole top skin off of this thing. It'll make it easier to fix areas like this. And then whenever we go and re-glue it, we'll clean all the fiberglass. We'll get a nice bond. We'll know for sure that this thing is securely glued on and any crash damage will be removed. All right, so I got the garage cleaned up and we have the rear deck removed off of the 65. You can see we have a little bit of a splice action going on here between these taillight panels. And we also have some lapping patch action here on the rear deck. So I don't know what's going on here. We're not going to know until we, well, really until we look at it from the top side or peel these off. I don't know if there's a crack under here and they wanted to reinforce it, or if there's just a big old hole there and they put a, you know, piece underneath. So we'll have to do some investigating there. I can see a whole bunch of screw holes and pieces of rivets and stuff like that. So this is going to need some surgery. But now that that's out of the way, it's a lot easier to work on this guy. So now I'm going to go ahead, remove these strikers. And I have a screwdriver and ratchet set up here. Then we can go ahead and drill all these rivets out of here. And we can break the bond seam at the bottom. We have to drill out a couple aluminum rivets here in the fiberglass to remove these rocker pieces. And there's rivets that go a whole way along here. Probably have to wrestle around with some of the seatbelt stuff. We'll get these fiberglass rockers out of here, and then we can just slide the birdcage away from the floor tub, and then we'll start working on the front stuff. So I have the firewall, hinge pillar, and the rocker piece off of this white donor car that's all twisted. You can really see how twisted it is when you compare the two. Now I'm going to jump onto this red guy here. I'm going to start by taking off the firewall. There's two bolts that hold it here on each side, but we're missing one side, so that's fine. So we're going to pull those bolts out. Hopefully we don't break them, probably will. Then I need to drill out these rivets that go along the firewall. There's one underneath this giant clump of glue. And then we have a nice cross-section view here, so you can see the firewall comes up here, and it loops up right here where it ends. This is glue that tapers off. There's a bonding strip that goes through here that gets riveted to the birdcage, and we have to break this joint between the firewall and here. So shouldn't be too bad. It's kind of nice because half the work is already done for us. And then we just got to get this hinge pillar off. There's actually a little bonding strip in here. There's a joint right here. And underneath here, there's a bonding strip. And then it seams underneath here. You'll see it whenever I get this off. And then they kind of cut through the rocker here. So we have to do some splitting. Overall, though, the fiberglass is in nice shape. We'll be able to reuse these on the car. So now I just need to pull these off. And then all we'll have left is all the bonding strips on the bird cages. So pretty much all the fiberglass removed off of all 3 of these chunks. It's really not necessary to remove every piece, but since I'm going to be doing some windshield splicing, I also want to look to check the condition of the windshield frame, make sure everything's okay. You can see everything's really nice on this guy. I also wanted to take the ones off of here in case we need to straighten this to use for another project, and we can get an idea of really how extensive the damage is. Now this is the most important part here. Again, I really didn't need to remove this one, but since we're here, may as well, and I found a little bit of rust that we can treat. It's not anything really dangerous or to be concerned about. Everything here looks like it's in nice shape in terms of rust. If you get the sealer out of here, you can see that it's just surface rust. We really don't have a whole lot to worry about. There's just this kink here. But overall, everything looks really nice. No real surprises. So I have all my bonding strips laid out here that I removed off the car. And you can see how much overlap we have here of windshield frame. So I'll end up cutting it somewhere and splicing them together. But you can see we have a whole nice set of bonding strips with some extra pieces. I went over all these bonding strips with 36 grit just to find all these rivets, and then I also decided while they're attached to the car, it's easier to prep them while they're installed rather than prep them after. So normally I would leave a lot of, there's still a couple spots here and there, but I would normally leave a lot of the heavy stuff like this. I would leave a lot of the heavy bonding adhesive and fiberglass on it and clean it later. But I found it's a lot easier to do it when it's attached to the car and it's not, you know, flopping around on the bench. So now I'm gonna put all these in a safe spot because we're gonna need these for later, but that's where I'm gonna end the video off. I'm gonna get this stuff cleaned up, and the next video we're gonna start working on getting these dents out of here. We're gonna start taking these panels apart and taking all 3 of these, putting them together, and hopefully by the end of the video making a single coupe birdcage. You might be looking at this thinking, why did you just ruin that car? I mean, it looked kind of like a car, and now it's just a pile of parts everywhere that looks really not all that recognizable. It looks more like a chop shop in here than a restoration. But every single fiberglass joint on that car was broken because of the impact of the crash. So as I started to look at the car, the more I looked at it, it just made sense to take every single joint off. And also to fix the crash damage, it made the most sense to peel all the fiberglass back and fix the birdcage the right way. So there's plenty of ways to do this. This is the way I did this. I'm sure I freaked out the owner a little bit whenever I sent him a picture of the car all stripped down, but don't worry, it'll come back together and it'll be better than it was, certainly better than it was, but it'll be just as good as new whenever it's done. So that's the plan for this. Just trust the process. That's one of those moments that it's gonna get worse before it gets better. Trust the process, and don't worry, we got it from here. It'll be a nice car when it's done. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. This video ends right here, but I kept working, and we have some birdcage action going on over here that you're not gonna wanna miss next week. Hopefully we'll get this thing into a completed birdcage with doors hung and latching and everything looking pretty good. And then we'll start putting this old girl back together, getting it reskinned and get it ready for its Roadster Shop chassis. So I got a lot of work to do, and I'll catch you guys later.